And good morning. We are live on the Falcons Podcast at our new time at 8:30 in the morning and change. I'll probably start scheduling it for 8:35. I need that extra 5 minutes. But this is our new time, and we are 1 week away and a day from the NFL draft. It is almost that time. Nick, how are you doing, my friend? You fired up?
Yeah, I am fired up. I'm getting excited for it to finally get here. Feeling really good with my Lion coffee this morning. The little guy slept from 11 to 4:30 last night, so I'll count that as a win. I mean, I'm still exhausted because didn't go to bed until about 11. But hey, we're doing okay, and we're getting excited for the week ahead.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can get used to. It's like, oh, 5 hours sleep and a full meal. I feel like a new man. It's great. Now I'm like, oh, 8 hours. I only got 8 hours sleep. Though I do say I'm starting to get older. I think I finally hit that time where it's like, oh, old people don't need as much sleep. I feel like that now. Like, oh, 6 hours. Yeah, I'm ready to get up. Damn, I don't want to get up. So
Yeah.
we get up and go live every morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because we like having the conversation with you and saying hello to some folks before we even get started. They're in the chat on YouTube, like Victor Atkins. He was in early. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick and Falcons fam. I think Pitts will do great. I've never doubted him. I think not having a legitimate passing quarterback the last couple seasons has hurt him and his stats. I titled the show around the Raheem Morris interview with Steve Wyche, and Raheem Morris ended up talking a lot about Kyle Pitts. And it sounds like Pitts is going to be a big part of the plans of the Atlanta Falcons offense during Raheem Morris's interview. And he says, what are you looking forward to doing? And he says, oh, Drake London and Bijan Robinson. It kind of came up, well, what about Kyle Pitts? No, it was just kind of a slip of the tongue or, an omission by just these are the other guys. It sounds like Kyle Pitts, and we'll get into that a little bit for sure. Because I agree with you. I think the quarterback has made a big difference for him, and the injury, another couple of things. Terry Ocean Boy Martin says, what's poppin', Nick and Scott? He's got his coffee emoji. I'll drink to that. What it do, Bird Gang? Rise up. John Harrell is in here. He says, good morning, Scott, Nick, and the crew. That's all, y'all. I think we'll see our receivers catching the ball in motion. Wouldn't that be nice to see a quarterback hit a receiver who is already heading in the right direction, or at least horizontally, so he can get some separation and turn up, but hit a guy in stride? Wouldn't that be nice?
Some
I
of
bet
that
receivers had the worst yak in the NFL the last 2 years. Wouldn't surprise me.
If we're talking
Discounted
purely
screens, if you took screens out of it, Nick.
Yeah, if I was going to say if you're talking purely wide receiver, it might be Denver, just because of how bad Wilson is in that area of the field. Denver had a lot of yak, but it's because of how many checkdowns they had, and that's not to wide receivers typically. But I also think it's not just the quarterback talk here too. It's going from the Arthur Smith offense, which is a lot more static routes, to the getting guys in motion, getting guys on the move, that you will see more from the West Coast offense, from the Sean McVay tree. So I would expect more yak. And with teams, I mean, God, it all comes back to, this philosophical team building and schematic talk, Scott. But with teams playing so much more nickel defense and voiding the middle of the field to play more coverage on the back end, soft zone, there's space in the middle of the field for playmakers to get the ball and make something happen. So it's hard to get those explosive plays down the field where they catch it and come down with it, because they're taking that away schematically. But that means there's space in the middle to take advantage of. And a lot of those offenses that you've seen really take off the last 2-3 years in terms of explosive plays have really, put linebackers in hell and worked the yak over the middle of the field. Of course, I'm on a monologue and you take a sip right then, but go ahead.
And like a good server. The Falcons have the weapons, that's for sure. And when Raheem Morris was talking about it, he kept saying, those guys, and then Kyle Pitts in particular, when he's talking about big friendly targets, there's another one out there that's a big friendly target that can run after the catch with his size and break a tackle, and Drake London. Kaio, apologies. Crescent, help me out with that one. I'll see if I can get it right. Hate to see Cordero Patterson go, but love to watch Kyle Pitts grow up. Yeah. I think Kyle Pitts is in for a big season. You hope that he is at least healthy, new lease on life, a quarterback that can get him the ball. a different, as Nick just went through his monologue, the schematic advantages of getting him in motion and hitting him in stride. Can he become who he was drafted to be? We saw glimpses of that. We saw partial of that as rookie season. 1,026 yards, 1 touchdown. That was where it was not quite there. And Nick, when we start talking about arm strength and where it really matters, I think the red zone, it comes into play with those tighter windows. You know, Matt Ryan had good overall numbers in the red zone, but his top weapons, Kyle Pitts has 1 touchdown. The knock on Julio Jones was always the red zone. Who was our quarterback at the time? You know, and that might be it. If we're going to talk about Matt Ryan in a negative light, that might be it.
Yeah. I mean, not to be same talking point again, but also I think just going from the Denver example, because that's what I watch, you know, nearest and dearest to my heart, but going from Nathaniel Hackett to Sean Payton, I can safely say that a lot of red zone passing stuff is schemed up as well. Like, oh my gosh, look how good Russell Wilson was in the red zone last year. Well, the guy's freaking wide open. I mean, it's like, good job. He hit him on time. But I think that should be a big aspect as well. And yeah, I'm excited for Kyle Pitts this season. Obviously, it was good to hear Raheem Morris talk about that. I'm sure you're going to pull that up. But big thing I want to say, you mentioned the injury a couple times, but tight ends historically take 3 to 4 years to really come into their own. Last year, Sam Laporta was different. Now, I think the Iowa tight ends, they're harder to extrapolate to the rest of the league because they're actually being asked to do pro style things, where at the college level, a lot of times teams, they don't know what to do with the tight end from the spread stuff. So Kyle Pitts still coming into his own, learning the game and all the aspects of the tight end position, and just 23 years old, coming off an injury. So the ceiling is still sky high, despite, you know, last 2 seasons being a little underwhelming. My biggest question with Kyle Pitts is the way I see him win is more on the vertical plane. And you don't see many tight ends historically dominate where they are vertical plane specialists. It's more the nuance in the area of the field, finding the soft spot of the zone, the suddenness over the middle of the field, which, not saying Kyle Pitts doesn't have that, but given his height, given how fast he moves, it's harder for him to stop on a dime and be as subtle. So I'm curious to see how they can unlock that, because it's a special skill set, but it's not one that you typically see from the best tight ends.
Well, and the change of direction might come into, we talk about his combine numbers, his 40, his wingspan, etc. But what was actually below par for as good of an athlete as he was his vertical leap. Was only, I say only, but it was like low 30s. You know, it wasn't in the 40 range where some of these guys actually are, 35 plus. It wasn't in that range, which to me is, that also leads to your explosion and your change of direction in there. So I think that can get better with time and strength. He entered the league, his first game in the NFL, he was just 20 years old. So, you know, as with that frame of his, he can put on a lot of power in his lower body as he matures and gets going. Red Swarm says, wonderful Wednesday morning. Here's a coffee emoji. I'll drink to that. He says, Scott, Nick, and all my friends in the chat. And you mentioned underwhelming. You know who never underwhelms for us is this guy right here. Michael Ronquillo, coming in red hot, getting us started before we had even hit the go live button with a $100 super chat, doing everything he can to support the show and make sure that we're able to keep doing the things that we love doing. And it's because of people like you, Michael, we can. And the thing is, Michael wasn't alone today. Coach Chris came in early. He says, good morning, studs. He's got the coffee emoji. Have a great show and win the day. And John Harrell coming in hot pink with the fuchsia. And, you know, Friday, I'm going to remember to do this. Friday, when I'm going solo, when Nick's doing daddy stuff, I'm going to show some of John's videos of him drag racing that Mustang of his in this picture. It's pretty awesome. He says, let's just agree we will have competent quarterback play. And John, I think that's a big part of it. Nick knows, you know, this is our 4th year going together, Nick and I already, and we've never actually met face to face. Isn't that kind of crazy? That's going to change this fall. You know, he's in Seattle. I'm in Atlanta. We're not exactly neighbors. So I've always had a bias. We talk about biases. You hear me say it all the time. There is no such thing as non-biased. We're all biased. One of my biases, I love big receivers. I just like big receivers because I feel like you can always throw them open. As I watched Kyle Pitts and Drake London struggle with inaccurate quarterbacks, I've kind of changed with that a little bit, thinking, well, it doesn't do any good to have this size if you've got a quarterback that overthrows and underthrows. Underthrow, you're throwing it into the guy the defensive back. It's underthrown, so I can't use my height because I have to go back through him. An overthrow, nobody can get to it if it's to the sideline. Otherwise, it's to a safety. Matt Ryan was a hella accurate quarterback. Nobody's going to deny that. Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, not so much. Kirk Cousins, he's more in the Matt Ryan mold with probably a little bit more zip on his arm.
Yeah, for me, I think I come away with Matt Ryan versus Mariota versus Desmond Ridder and the big body receiver stuff is that you have to have quarterbacks who are confident and fitting it in tight windows and anticipatory throwers, because if you have, see it open, throw it open quarterbacks, you're not going to get those guys who aren't, amazing separators as many opportunities. So that's what I come away thinking about that. But I think Kirk Cousins can very much be that guy for this offense with Kyle Pitts. So again, how is he going to look coming off an injury? He's just 23 years old, another year further away. This is typically you see a step both in years in the league and 2 years removed from that injury. So should be a big year from him. Again, my big challenge for those in the chat, he is a unicorn. That's why he went number 4 overall as a tight end. But the successful tight ends in the league, the last decade, the last 30 years, which of them mimic Kyle Pitts from a play style and skill set perspective? Because again, your Tony Gonzalez's, your Kelsey
Burris.
Plaxico, I bet he's wide receiver. I mean, that's the thing, right? And is there as much ability to do that when you're not playing the boundary compared to, the slot or in line? We're going to find out. You have a quarterback here. You got a lot of pieces. It's not that I don't think he can be a good one, but it's just, he's an outlier, and that can be good or it can be bad.
We see the coffee emojis come in because it is, Falcons Podcast for breakfast. And I want to say thank you to Lion Coffee, who has been keeping us powered up and caffeinated for a couple of years now. And we've kind of formalized a partnership with Lion Coffee, and they sponsor the show. And one of the things that they want to do, there's a couple things that Lion Coffee wants to do besides giving us delicious coffee. They want to do some giveaways coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. But also, if you head to lioncoffee.com and you use the code GoFalcons20, you get 20% off. So as a Falcons podcast listener, as a partaker of lioncoffee.com, which Nick and I definitely are, you also can get 20% off. Now, the two things that are excluded from this are the 100% Kona and any full cases. Everything else, like the stuff I'm drinking right now, the Cafe Honolulu, which is rich and zesty, medium dark, which is spectacular, by the way, 20% off. So give our friends over at Lion Coffee, Hawaii-based coffee company, give them a chance, give them an order. Go Falcons 20% off at lioncoffee.com. We appreciate their support. We appreciate if you support them because they support us. We all support each other. It's like one big happy Falcons podcast family. So moving on. Want to go. There's some people coming in saying thank you to us for what we do. And, again, we're here for y'all. So Keith Robbins says this is the best show ever, and he gives some stars for it. And, one of the best messages, just turn into a great day already, y'all. So We Sound Strange comes in with a super chat, and he says, because of me, a fan of y'all last year, and man, my Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays have forever changed. Falcons fan in Houston. That's just awesome. That's very humbling. So we like to have fun on here. We like to call it like we see it. Nick, I'm not a fan of the phrase tell it like it is, because it might not be. If I say Dallas Turner's going to be the guy, he might not be. That's how I see it. I'll call it like I see it, not tell it like it is. And Nick's a lot the same way. That's why we've been doing this for 4 years, going on 4 years together and having fun doing it. And the show's growing because of people like you. We Sound Strange. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And also, again, shout out to Lion Coffee. I'm drinking the vanilla macadamian, subtle flavor and really rich. Just it's impossible to beat. It's so good. More roar in every pour, as they say there on the back end. So shout out to Lion Coffee. Make sure you guys are checking them out.
T. Terry, good to see you. He says Pitts will break record tight end receiving yards for a season. It would almost be a good thing if he had a great season, but maybe didn't. With Bijan Robinson there, with Drake London there, all of a sudden Rondale Moore and Darnell Mooney start start picking up. You get a second round receiver. You spread the love a little bit. I want him to be a huge fantasy guy. I want him to be a huge part of the red zone, et cetera, et cetera. But what I would really like, y'all, one of these, not just the wedding ring, but let's start winning again. The 1,000-yard season was nice in this season where you didn't have many expectations. But man, it's time to start getting back to the playoffs. That's what I think we really want to see Kyle Pitts do, is help the team win, Nick.
I mean, obviously, if he's breaking the all-time tight end record of receiving, that's good things for the offense overall, you'd think. But I'm very much a quality over quantity when it comes to statistics like that. So hopefully, it's not coming at the Drake London injury, Bijan Robinson struggling, et cetera, spreading the love around. And when you have a veteran quarterback like Kirk Cousins and a up-and-coming offensive mind from a scheme that's the flavor of the past 5 years, coming from that Shanahan McVay tree, you hope that it is efficiency more than counting numbers. And again, you can go week by week picking your matchups. This is one thing I really appreciated when watching Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. They didn't need that just no doubt number one, although it's obviously nice when you have that guy. But to have like 3 or 4 guys, rookie quarterbacks, I feel like they can't really take advantage of it as much because they're not there in the mind game aspect.
Right.
But the veteran quarterbacks, it's like, okay, I have my matchups. We're going to spam the heck out of this one this week. This week is a Kyle Pitts matchup. Next week, they got a weak cornerback. It's a Drake London one. Next week, the linebackers move in cement. We're going to use Bijan Robinson. So when you have a lot of weapons like that, you can kind of go week by week, matchup by matchup, when you have the weapons paired with a cerebral veteran quarterback.
Curtis K. Case, CKC. Good morning, Scott Nick. Good morning to you. Welcome in. Oh, Rusty, we need to get you some coffee, dude. I call it the caffeinated bliss. He says, crazy to say this, but I'm starting to lose interest in football. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a softening up of the sport or what, but I just don't care as much as I used to. It's a strange feeling. Rusty, I don't know how old you are, but it can happen as you get older. Your priorities change a little bit, and frankly, as he says, maybe it's because the Falcons suck for basically their entire existence and I'm sick of it. It's not easy to be a Falcons fan. It's not. It's not easy to just hop on the bandwagon. It's pretty easy to be a Braves fan for most of the last 30-something years. It wasn't easy in the 80s when I was growing up, but ever since when John Sherholtz came in 1991 and forward, it's been pretty good. They've been a pretty good team, a stellar franchise, but it's not easy to be a Falcons fan. And 2016 probably did in some people. That's tough. I kind of joke with when people say, my fandom has gone away as I've been doing this professionally for so long now. But people say, they say something bad about the Falcons. Oh, sorry, Scott. I'm like, dude, you can't hurt me any more than the Falcons hurt me growing up, for God's sakes. They hurt us more than anybody. So I get it. It's still fun. The general manager aspect, the team building is fun. And let's see how this team can do. I think this team can make some noise this season, and it'll be fun to see happen.
I think anything less than 10 wins is a massive disappointment for this team. I probably would be guessing 11 right now. We'll have a chance to go through game by game at some point. We still have a lot of questions on defense. It's not just the roster, but also the changing of the scheme. How can Lake do out there? But yeah, it's a team that you should be excited about this season, without a doubt. We got Chris Walker coming, says, Nick, how in the world can you be awake this early? Scott looks more sleepy than you do. I'm a madman. I think in college, my buddies said that my superpower was the ability to function with little sleep. We really tested that early on with the baby. Not to share too much in here, but my wife is a really, really, really light sleeper. So I've been sleeping in the bedroom with the baby, and she's been taking the guest room so she can actually get some sleep. Otherwise, she's pretty useless. So it's just been me in there. And sometimes that's frustrating, no doubt. But, I've gone plenty of days these last 3 months where I've gotten, maybe 2 to 4 hours, but still kicking. Sometimes that's not sustainable, for years. But I'm okay with it right now. I'd say that the ability to function and perform tasks with little to no sleep is probably my one superpower.
And this isn't a fair comparison, Chris, not only do we have a pollen count in like the thousands when 50 is considering bad, I'm 20 years older than him, man. Come on. Seriously, 20. How old are you?
I don't want to say. No, I'm 32.
Oh, 32. I'm 51.
Hmm.
I got 20 years on him, brother. I look
Yeah,
all right.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't have people coming in here talking about how hot I am, like you do, Scott, every once in a while.
Yeah,
But
I'm 51. Yeah, and these bags, yes, those are just there. They're just there. So,
Yep.
yes, Jordan Brown says, tell Florio to shut it. I like it on that one. Sip thoughts. This is the we'll have to get an evening sponsor. Good morning, everyone. I think this will be a breakout year for Drake London. I think Drake, I don't think there's really questions for Drake coming in. Now, can a guy like Drake London, can a guy like Chris Lindstrom, can they elevate themselves to get the kind of recognition that they have played to because they were playing on a better team? You know, the Jesse Tuggle effect, you know, the guys that we've seen have toiled away on bad teams, not get the respect they deserve. I look at the offensive guard rankings at the beginning of the season, and Chris Lindstrom's like 7th. Behind Quentin Nelson with the Indianapolis Colts has been average at best the last 3 seasons. Like, you get in the playoffs, the individual recognition starts coming around. So I think Drake, breakout from a Q rating, I'm there with you. From a play standpoint, I'm pretty happy with Drake London. Kyle Pitts, we can say, okay, he needs to step up. Pretty happy with Drake London.
Yeah, I mean, just overall, if it's not the quarterback, your team needs to be having some consistent success as well as primetime games in big-time matchups where people are tuning in. And that hasn't been the case with the Falcons since I've been covering them. So hopefully that'll improve this season. I mean, you already have a lot of interest coming into this year with the Kirk Cousins move and everything. I mean, it's not like, he's a superstar coming over, but it definitely raises the floor. And if you win football games, people are going to pay attention and talk about you beyond just, the crazy NFL heavy people. I see Leon also came in and asked about how's the baby doing? He asks every show. I appreciate you, Leon. Baby's doing well. Let me sleep 5.5 continuous hours last night. So we're going to take it.
Yeah, that's more than I sleep in continuous hours at this age. If it's like, oh, I'm up at 3 the first time to get up and pee. But T8 days and counting, yes, it is. Raheem Morris also talked a little bit of draft, sort of. It was a fun interview. If you go to si.com/NFL/Falcons, you can actually see it. I've embedded it into a story. And he tried to kind of trick him a little bit, and Raheem Morris called him out on it, which was funny. He says, so you're picking at 8. Which do you prefer, putting pressure on the quarterback or locking down a wide receiver and playing with 10? And Raheem Morris kind of laughed. He was like, yeah, veteran reporter trying to get me to tell you who we're taking, huh? And it was a good moment. He says, I'm not telling you. We aren't telling you. But he did say how much he really has enjoyed. Looking forward to getting to work with A.J. Terrell again. He was there when they drafted A.J. and then had to leave when he was a rookie. And then having Jesse Bates again. So 8 days to the draft. We can do a mock draft if you want to. I feel like we're a little mock drafted out. Dallas Turner seems to be the pick constantly. Maybe we wait and do one next week. I wanted to talk about, Kyle Pitts and the team again today, and see what y'all wanted to talk about with your questions and stuff. So, and Jordan Brown says, I love the new starting time. That's good. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, 8:30. Eastern time is where we'll be going. Robbie Red, he says, I'm on my Delta flight headed to Denver, thinking about touring the Broncos stadium. Well, that's cool. And Calvin's mediocre channel, man, undersell. I like it. Over deliver. Kyle Pitts would be a Hall of Famer by now if he even had a top 20 QB. Obvious hyperbole. And there was another one in here talking about, and Kyle Pitts had his big season, his record-breaking season with, a shell of what Matt Ryan was, So hopefully Kyle Pitts can be, Kirk Cousins can even be 90% of what he was last season. And Kyle Pitts should have a pretty good year.
I will say I'm probably going to avoid him in fantasy football because he's burned me 2 of the last 3 years when I've been excited about him as a player because it's hard to find good production from tight ends. But yeah, I'm expecting a much better season from Kyle Pitts and just the overall offensive functionality. I do think there's a possibility that we're overselling Zach Robinson because he is such an unknown, right? The range of what the offense could look like this year under a first-time offensive coordinator, because he just comes from the McVay Shanahan tree, doesn't guarantee that it's going to be good. There's an unknown factor there. Obviously, the ceiling is quite high, and that's what, in April 17th, that's what we kind of look into. But you see sometimes some guys from those coaching trees not work out. I feel like they've almost all worked out besides the one Denver took, of course.
I think one of the keys here is you're not talking about replacing Ryan Nielsen. You're talking about an incredibly underachieving offense.
Yes.
So I think one of the reasons it's like, okay, Zach Robinson might not be the next big thing, but the bar has been set so low that there should be improvement through osmosis. Just by showing up and seeping onto the field, there should be osmosis with Kirk Cousins. We had that discussion, which was more important, who would have been better for this team if you got Kirk Cousins and kept Arthur Smith, or if you got Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson and kept Desmond Ridder?
Quarterback for sure.
I think the quarterback for this team. For this team this year, I think Kirk Cousins was probably the biggest acquisition. Now, long term, we want Raheem Morris to be here for 25 years. Zach Robinson will not be. Zach Robinson could be a head coach in a year if he has a great year. That's just the way young offensive coordinators work.
Yep.
So, yes, the long term, you want it to be Raheem, and not just because of Kirk's age, for sure. But typically, quarterbacks, coaches, they go together. Find a Hall of Fame coach, you're going to find a Hall of Fame quarterback. And Black Mario 618, he says, "Yeah, I hope Kyle can reproduce what he did with Matt Ryan in year one or better, and that he's 100% healthy." That's the big one. I think with the year removed and not off from the injury, we're 18 months, 19 months away from when he got hurt, probably November, December of 2022. He's about almost 2 years removed from that knee injury. Played through it a little bit last year. Should be poised for a big season.
Yeah, really should be excited to see what he can do. And just a hell of a good player and athlete. Obviously, in hindsight, you probably don't take Kyle Pitts over some of the other guys in that class, but he still can end up being very much worth the pick there. I would not be, how long ago was it? Back in December, January, where a lot of talks about just move on from Pitts, kind of frustrated with his play, but still just 23 years old, working off a pretty big knee injury on a team that was clunky at best offensively, especially in the pass game. So let it breathe. It's kind of like a good bottle of wine. You got to put it in the decanter. It's okay. Just give it a second, and we'll find out year and a half from now, Kyle Pitts, whether or not what the trajectory, what the pathway is for him. But he's still unbelievably talented. Hasn't seemed to be much of an issue on the field or anything like that, besides wanting more targets. And I'd want a guy wants that, right? He wants to contribute, doesn't shy away from that. So again, don't give up on him. And I'm glad to see Falcons fans have turned back around and being excited about Pitts.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I did was when I learned the way the fifth-year options are set up. They're not draft-based. They're position-based, which is silly. So his fifth-year option is really affordable. It's half of what the wide receivers are going to be that were drafted 20 picks after him. That's ridiculous, but hey, it works in your favor. That goes to the argument that it might not be the worst thing in the world to use a non-premium position at a high pick, Nick. You're saving half the money. Keith and Ellen Johnson coming with some stars on Facebook. Thank you, sir. He says, "Good morning, guys. My favorite source for info on the Falcons." Well, we certainly appreciate that. And as Ghost Up, he's a little on the Ghost Up 6 feels like a Falcons fan. Feel like this is every year's title for Kyle. Yeah, I get that. I do. I understand. You thought he'd take that leap from year 1 to year 2, and it regressed. Year 3 was better. He was back and healthy. It was better, but it wasn't what you want, really what you're expecting from a number 4 pick. Number 4 needs to be that. He'll have his fifth-year option. I think it's May 2nd is when they have to decide whether or not they're going to pick up the fifth-year option. He's a no-brainer at $10 million. You're going to pick it up. But this is the year for me that he needs to become a force, not just another guy who's getting his numbers. He needs to be a force to be reckoned with to justify that number 4 overall pick, the highest drafted tight end in history. And he's got the talent, the ability to do it. I don't think anybody questions that.
Yeah, unbelievably gifted, 23 years old, explosive player. It's going to be a good year for him. I'm almost wondering at some point, I mean, we'll have to wait until after the draft because there's still a possibility that you had to add another dynamic playmaker. But I want to hear your rankings for, and listeners in the chat, rankings for how are you going to break down the impact distribution this season for the big 3 offensive playmakers you have, because it's going to be fun. You got 3 really young, obvious, highly drafted players that with competency in coaching, scheme, and now quarterback could really take off.
It should still be number 1, Bijan Robinson. I mean, that should be the focal point of your offense. And he should have twice as many touches, or he should have as many touches every game as a running back that Drake London and Kyle Pitts have combined. Now, what they do, if I get 15 touches from Kyle Pitts and Drake London, I'm going to be that should be pretty good. 7-8 touches is a lot. That's going to be 100 catches a year. For both of them, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Bijan should get 20. He should get 20 touches
more yards.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more yards, though.
Yards and scores. So, but the focal point of your offense, build off of that, and then we'll see. But we'll get into that after the draft. That's what the summer's for sure. Mike Harvey says, is 10-7 or 11-6 with a wild card loss at home a great first season for Morris and Cousins? Great? No. It's not a great first season. A great first season would be 12-5, and then playoffs be damned. Whatever happens there, hopefully you're competitive. But great first season over the long stretch of the year where you're not just taking a 1-game sample size like you would in the playoffs where fluky things happen. 12-5 would be a great season. 11-6 would be a good season. 10-7 is the expectation. Not the expectation. I'm expecting better than 10-7. Anything below 10-7, 10-7 is considered okay. You did okay.
Fine.
Anything below that would be under for me.
Yeah, I would say fine would be 10-7.
Acceptable is 10-7. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's the bad word. Fine. It was okay. How'd the season go? It was all right. It was all right. Your voice goes up. It's all right.
Yep. And also, I mean, you mentioned it too. I feel like we put, obviously in hindsight, putting so much on championships and rings, but things can happen in a single elimination tournament that I'd rather look at the overall sample size of the regular season to really get an idea. It's almost unfortunate. I think you mentioned this as well, especially in baseball, Scott, where like you play that 162 game season and then, the playoffs are a totally different format and you're out. Well, you're the best team in baseball, but la-di-da. Sorry, the Cardinals as a wild card team sneak in and knock you out. Just a tale as old as time. Well, I guess from a decade ago. Keith Brugman coming in here says, Raheem Morris seems to have some Dan Campbell in him. I'm expecting some bite marks on the kneecaps. I don't think he's as frothing at the mouth that I get from Dan Campbell, but he definitely is a player's coach. He's really a dynamic personality. It seems like a good interviewer. And Scott has a little bit more, not history with him, but perspective on him as watching him grow up in the league a bit, which is shout out to him. It's easy to, once you get there, maybe not grow up, especially if it doesn't work out for you. Well, I kind of am who I am. He seemed to somebody who's continued to evolve.
No, while he was going through the interview process the last couple of years, I compared him to Lane Kiffin, as a guy who had a really unbelievable position as a head coach in the NFL way too soon, thought they knew everything, flamed out massively as arrogant little young punks, and we're about the same age. So I was an arrogant, I still am, but I'm an older arrogant punk. I know when to not be as much anymore. Watch him get humbled and come back from it and learn from it. And I love Lane Kiffin now. He's self-deprecating. He's funny. He's engaging. But I knew a couple guys that coached for him. And when I was doing recruiting, and I'm like, I knew them beforehand. So we had a previous relationship. So I felt comfortable asking. I'm like, Lane Kiffin strikes me as a guy who was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple. And they're like, yes, that's it. Raheem Morris at Tampa Bay was arrogant. He was cocky. He was brash. He had some success, and then he flamed out massively, and he's had to work his way back up, and he admits it. I was arrogant. I was cocky. I was brash. I've learned. I've matured. And if you haven't done that in the 15 years that you've been doing this, then something's really wrong with you, and you probably still wouldn't be in the league. I love them. I love them both. I really do. Two guys I couldn't stand before. I love them both.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had some interesting stuff come across my timeline here, Scott, about the Falcons, if you want to kind of dig into it. I don't know if you saw,
hit it.
ESPN released a story today about Bill Belichick and his courting with the Falcons. And it sounds like, according to this report from ESPN, that the main reason Bill Belichick wasn't hired by the Falcons was Robert Kraft's persistence and relationship with Arthur Blank. Kraft called Blank multiple times, warning Blank not to trust Belichick, saying that Kraft was a big part of the reason why the Falcons passed on him this season, and just how obstinate and difficult Belichick was in terms of being a head coach. So you definitely talk about being in a boys club. These owners are definitely in that, especially some of the old guard stuff. And sounds like if it wasn't for Kraft, in Blank's ear, that Belichick could have been the head coach here instead of Blank. But I urge you to check out ESPN, because it's really interesting to see somebody as accomplished as Bill Belichick not get hired this cycle at all. And now that we have more information coming out about it.
It sounds like Robert Kraft was doing him dirty a little bit. And one thing we know about Arthur Blank, he's loyal to his people. The guys that are in the room already, and he's had Terry Fontenot for 3 years. That, enough time to build a relationship. And who does he hire? A guy that was in the building beforehand, Raheem Morris. Arthur Blank, for better or worse, is a good man to work for. He's a good boss.
Yep.
To his own detriment in some cases. We've seen it, holding on to a guy a year or two too long. We've seen it.
Yep.
But he's loyal to his people. That's one thing we will never doubt. Michael Dominic has an interesting question. He says, who's the better team, the Falcons or the Broncos?
It's not even a question. I mean, ask Vegas right now. Is it the Broncos or the Falcons? Broncos over under is like 5.5. I think the Falcons is 10.5, if I had to guess right now. That's just me setting it. Somebody can fact check me on the back end. But definitely the Falcons. That's one thing too. I've seen conversations come up like, should Denver Broncos trade their 2025 first? No. And then people retort back, well, why not? I'm like, well, look what Vegas is saying about the Broncos. Historically speaking, Vegas's win totals are pretty darn accurate. Obviously, there'll always be outliers, but you can look at a number of metrics. And I think historically, over the last decade, Vegas's win totals has been the most predictive of what the next season will be. And people will be like, well, Sean's never won less than 7 games. Well, how much of his coaching career did he have a Hall of Fame quarterback? This is a different era. And not that I think the Broncos can't, outperform their 5.5 over under. But it's a lot different when you're playing in a division with Mahomes and your quarterback currently is Jarrett Stidham. So definitely, I would not pick the Broncos in that matchup.
And Chris says that depends on the era. Over the years in the NFL, the Broncos have proven to be a better team, but right now I think the Falcons have a better roster talent. Those are different phrases, different descriptions. If you want to say club or franchise, it's Denver Broncos. Team means present. Right now, we line them up and play who wins. The Denver Broncos are in a little bit better position than the Falcons were in 2022. I think they've got a little bit more talent on their roster than the Falcons had in 2022. Not a ton, but a little bit more, and they're trying to survive a bad salary cap season. That's what they're trying to do. And so in the Falcons' expectations in 2023, you're coming out of hell, got some free agent money to spend. That's where the Broncos are. The Broncos are the 2022 Atlanta Falcons. Unfortunately, the Falcons did not take that next step, and it cost some guys their jobs. Mike Harvey says, is Matt Ryan a first ballot Hall of Famer? 60,000 yards as a Falcon. I think he is. I don't think he's going to be first ballot. I think the Super Bowl cost him that. If they had won that in 2016, probably he's got the numbers. He's top 10 in most career things. If he had finished the season with Indianapolis, I think he would have moved as high as like 5 on the all-time passing yards list, because he's within a shout, like he's within 1,000 yards. of jumping over not one but two players to move up a couple spots. But no, I don't think he is. I think I don't know if he'll get in, honestly. I don't know if he will end up being a Hall of Famer unless he goes on and has a great career as a broadcaster too. I think the Falcon factor on him and the non-playoff success could submarine his chances.
I think that when you look at his numbers overall historically, you'd be like, oh yeah, he's one of the top passers of all time. But then you put him in the context of the era where numbers are way up across the board, with also having the perennial team success with the top accolades. It's kind of hard to put him in there for me. I mean, does he get in there over Eli Manning? I think, heck, if I was playing one game, I'd probably take Matt Ryan, or not one game, but over the regular season careers, I'd rather take Matt Ryan. But Eli has the 2 rings on the New York market, beating the Patriots twice. I mean, God bless him for that, but that's a different conversation. But he's probably up there. I think probably Phillip Rivers has a better argument than Matt Ryan as well, despite not
pretty similar on that one.
I think those are the two that come together for me. I would.
And Phillip doesn't have the big humiliating loss.
Yeah,
he didn't get there to have it.
Yeah,
and what's odd, and you look at Matt Ryan's numbers in the 2016 Super Bowl, they were fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't. I think
what
have you done for me lately is going to hurt him the way it's hurt Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones should be in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And people remember how bad he was in LA on that massive contract. Just look at his numbers. Arguably the best center fielder of all time. I'm not saying he is, but he's in the discussion. 500 home runs? That gets you in the Hall of Fame. Matt Ryan, kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
same thing. A1 Forever is here. He says, shout out to the panel. Good to see you, my friend. Finally caught y'all live, and we're certainly glad you are here. We were talking about loyalty and Arthur Pitts. I got a comment from No Flex Wall Cubic. I'm not sure if I can find it. What time was it? 4 minutes ago, so 9:12. I got to scroll down just a little bit. Ryan, I see you're in the house. We'll see if we can find that one too. I guess I'm just gonna have to read it because I can't find it. But he says if Arthur Blank was loyal, we'd have Justin Fields. I don't see that one. If he was loyal, who do you go after at quarterback that had some other problems? He went after Deshaun Watson because he was a former ball boy of the Atlanta Falcons. Justin Fields didn't have any real ties to the Falcons that I'm aware of. Yeah, he's from Kennesaw, but there's a lot of football players from, Metro Atlanta. This is 4th biggest state in the country behind the big 3, the number 4 state in the country for producing college prospects, college signees, and probably NFL guys behind California, Florida, and Texas. So there's a lot of guys. So I don't know, what am I missing with Justin Fields and the Atlanta Falcons other than he's from Kennesaw? Don't know.
I don't know.
But I don't know that there'd be any loyalty on that one for sure.
Yep. And you could have had him for a song and you didn't. So I don't know. We got Ryan Adonis says, thank you, Robert Kraft, for saving our franchise. Yeah, I guess Robert Kraft also came through and said that he denied this stuff, but I mean, what's he going to do? So, I mean, gosh, it's kind of ugly there. I wonder if there's this is just me speculating, but Tom Brady kind of getting pushed out the door and still having some gas left and seeing him succeed at a very high level with Tampa Bay. I wonder how much that was brought about by Bill Belichick and then some irritation that you let a all-timer out the door when he still was playing pretty well. And then in hindsight, it's like, wait a second, it wasn't Tom Brady being washed. It was this offensive infrastructure, the drafting, the team itself being absolute garbage water around the quarterback position in the Patriots. I mean, I don't know if there's an offense that is worse set up right now to support a quarterback than what the Patriots have. But that's the bad spot for sure.
We're in a tight spot. Right, yeah, Ryan Adonis, I know how you feel on this. I wasn't a big fan of getting Bill Belichick. He was definitely down the list on mine. I wanted, God, it's been a while since I even thought about it. I wanted Harbaugh. Who else was available in this cycle?
We liked Bobby Slowick. He was interesting. Didn't get a job this cycle, but he's definitely an up and comer.
And the Detroit Lions guy that wasn't Slowick. It was
Slowick's Houston. Ben Johnson went back to. Also, there was McDonald, who I really liked. That ended up going to Seattle, the defensive coordinator from Baltimore. So those were some of the hotter names, in my opinion, in this.
I did like Harborough, but I like the Raheem Morris hire. I did, especially with, who's he going to be able to bring in with him?
Yep.
I like it. So I was a fan of the hire. And Jay Black's pissed. Again, we hold grudges around here in the South. I don't know if you're Irish like I am, but I hold grudges from kindergarten and before. Falcons lost in the Super Bowl against the Patriots was a team loss suffered behind a legacy unhappy person in Shanahan. Matt should go in the first ballot Hall of Fame. To quote the great Matt Ryan coming off the field in Super Bowl 16, run the effing ball. Yeah. How do you get holdings and strip fumbles? I thought the throw to Julio on the sidelines was it. That was the game winner right there. And there's one of 100 things. Like 100 things had to go right in a row. Any one of those go wrong and the Falcons win a Super Bowl. That was unbelievable. Rusty Moore, he's got the trade for you. Send the Broncos number 8 and Falcons get 12 and PS2. You're welcome. Yeah, that's not going to happen. The only way PS2 moves is for the Broncos to get into the top 4. And I'm not saying they trade it to one of the top 4 teams, but they move him, pick up 2 first-round draft picks, and then trade 3 picks to get into the top 4. So I don't think that's going to happen. Rusty, appreciate the support of the show. You're always here for us, and I certainly appreciate it. Dave says, guys, is the NFL losing some of its off-season steam? My initial answer on this is no, it is not. The NFL draft gets more viewers on Thursday night than the NBA Finals and the World Series. Think about that for a moment. It will be the same way come Thursday night. It is getting more and more popular. I thought they hit critical mass a few years ago when they just seemed to not care about their customers. The rising ticket prices, the kneeling shenanigans, all of those other stuff that was going on. They just seemed to be tone deaf to their fans. I'm like, okay, they've reached critical mass. Now it's going to contract. Nick, it hasn't. It's still growing. They're a behemoth.
I think this draft is going to blow other ones out of the water because it is offensive heavy. There is not a lot of, after the first pick, there's a lot of questions still. And there are quarterbacks and wide receivers galore. The one thing we're missing is sexy running backs, which still, for some reason, no, sorry, Falcons fans, but still get a little bit of hype. And also, we don't really have the defensive line superstars as well. Sorry, I know Dallas Turner has been mocked a lot, but I think if he was a superstar caliber guy, probably wouldn't be making it to 8 as a blue prospect. Doesn't mean he won't be at the NFL level. Add that caveat, but I think this draft is going to have so many eyeballs. I think it'll probably be the most watched all time.
The quarterbacks are sexy, and there's going to be a lot of them.
Yep. And trades and just speculation. We haven't had the trades yet either, right? A lot of times you see the moves happen already, and now that they're kind of waiting because
you can't trade. You don't know who's going to be there.
Exactly. So
I can't trade to 5 if I want a quarterback.
Nope. And if you only like 3, you can't trade to 4.
Yeah.
Right? So
I can't trade to 5. Like, who's open for business? The Chargers would move down. The Falcons would move down. Mm-hmm. The Cardinals would move down, but I can't. I might be able to trade to 4, but like you said, if I only like 3, I can't do it. Pamela Johnson, good to see you. Good morning, Scott and Nick. Good morning to you as well. Appreciate you being in here. Floyd Donnelly says, I'm pure Irish. Yeah, almost as my son's Sean McAllister Kennedy, for God's sakes. He's got a 4-leaf clover tattooed on his butt. So feel like I missed somebody. I got all of those. We're going to get out of here momentarily unless there's anything that is on your minds. Let's hear Tony. We'll get on Tony on here. He says, Tony Bradley says, would it surprise you and everyone else if the Falcons take Brock Bowers in the first and McConkey in the second? Wide receiver Ladd McConkey, couple of Georgia guys. This is where Georgia fans go into the comments and say the Falcons do not draft Georgia Bulldogs, let alone 2. My take on this is if Morris just wants to outscore other teams, then this would make sense. Yes, it would surprise me. I think Brock Bowers is a little redundant to what you already have, considering the needs you have on this team. Ladd McConkey, this will go in cold takes. Ladd McConkey is a better fit for the Atlanta Falcons than Brock Bowers. There, I said it. I just think you've got 2 jumbo receivers already. What you don't have is that separation, that man beater in tight spaces like Ladd McConkey. I think the closest thing you have to Ladd McConkey is Bijan Robinson. I think he's a better fit for this team than Brock Bowers is.
Yeah, no team in the NFL last season used tight ends less than the Los Angeles Rams. They led the NFL in 11 personnel usage at 82%. Now, granted, you could argue that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are almost hybrid wide receiver tight ends with some of their usage. They're blocking their slot versus boundary usage. But again, the 11 personnel, 82%, according to NFELO, which does a lot of good aggregate statistics. The Rams, 82% 11 personnel, most in the league, 6% 12 personnel, the lowest in the league, and 0% 22 personnel of 0% as well. So really just, I don't know about the two tight end stuff, unless you're viewing Kyle Pitts purely as a wide receiver and moving him there. I do think that the skill sets of Pitts and Bowers are very different, where I think Bowers is much more that horizontal plane kind of player versus Pitts being more the vertical plane. But I don't know. I think that we've talked about Rome Odunze a lot. That's one reason too I keep coming back to, like, wide receiver might be on the table, because with what we've seen from the Rams, they want to run 11 personnel until the cows come home. It's a very 11 personnel team, and you can't have enough wide receivers when you're doing that. So especially difference makers. So that's I cannot see Bowers there at 8 to the Falcons. If you trade back and he's there at 16, you're like, God, at this point, we just love him too much. We graded him top 8. We weren't going to take him at 8, but now he's there at 16. Okay, we can talk. But at 8 overall, I think that's very unlikely.
Yeah, if you didn't have Kyle Pitts, I'd say okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But I just think it's a little redundant on that. And Floyd says our special teams, kick and punt return is going to be boss. Avery Williams should be back. Last year, when Avery Williams got hurt, I put in the headline, suffers major blow. This is a big loss. And some people, blah, 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 kind of went on that. I'm like, listen, the guy led the league in punt return yards. This is a big loss. I don't care if he's third string running back. I'm not worried about the running back. The hidden yardage in the return game now, especially that they're changing the kick return rules, and he can be one of those guys that are back there. But getting Avery Williams back is very good for this team. He was a hit. If you're going to draft a return specialist, you want Avery Williams. Avery Williams did really well, and he should be back this year.
Yep. Yeah, it should be a fun player, and we'll see what the Falcons do. Probably got to wrap it on up here, Scott. I need to get a little bit more coffee and before we start the Broncos. We got, speaking of coffee, Michael Latsky coming in and sends us coffee from Puerto Rico, and also some tasty treats.
Oh, yeah, the macaroons. The Island Mike sends us care packages. Michael, thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. Felix, and this is probably going to be our last one unless I see, color flashes in front of me, and then we'll stick around and I'll kick Nick off. What happens if Dallas Turner goes before 8? Is trading back out the window? Felix, I think it might actually be the opposite. I think if you're happy with Jared Verse, Florida State edge, Dallas Turner, Alabama Crimson Tide edge, Leatu Latu, UCLA edge, then you're more likely to trade back if those guys are there. If one of them's gone, you might think, well, one thing that's going to mean is there's probably 2 guys that are really good that are available, Joe Alt and Rome Odunze.
Malik Neighbors. Yeah.
Malik Neighbors, so you might want to stick there. What it does, Felix, it does 2 things. I think it increases the chances of a trade back, and it also increases the chances that you don't take edge at 8. Those are the 2 things that happen. So if Dallas Turner is gone before 8, then there's going to be 2 of those elite 8 offensive players available. You're kind of hoping it's a quarterback. I don't think it's going to be. If it's a quarterback, you're in business. You're picking up somebody else's second-round pick at the worst to move back, maybe even a first. But trading back still makes a lot of sense to me. Move back to 10, 11, 12, 13. Get another second-round pick. Get one of the edges or a corner, and then trade back up into the back end of the first, and you can get one of the edges or a corner and fill your 2 biggest needs. Safety is still bigger need than cornerback for me. But as far as where you want to spend your premium resources, you can come out of this draft filling your 2 biggest needs, and that needs to happen.
I agree. One thing also to keep note on with the Falcons is that they have kind of quietly been, let's talk about flashing there. But they have somewhat quietly still been putting in work at the quarterback position. And if you trade back and accumulate even more assets than you already have, you give yourself availability and options where, let's say you really do like Bo Nix as a fit for the offense, but you're not taking him at 8. Probably shouldn't take him in the top 20. But he's sitting there at 40 and you already got a bunch of extra picks. Okay, I don't remember what this Falcons second round pick is, but okay, take him there and you can still fill out. Or you're getting 2025 picks. You can once again look for a quarterback next season because I know that's one reason a lot of Falcons fans didn't want Kirk Cousins because, okay, well, what about 5 years from now? Well, what about next season? But the 5 years from now, you can answer that question. You have 5 years to answer it. But if you trade back, give yourself more assets, you have more avenues to answer that question and hopefully come away with an answer.
Michael Ranquillo, you're a prince. Sunrise to get us started and sunset to close out the show with back-to-back $100 super chats. Dude, thank you so much. I hope to goodness you are at the Broncos for breakfast meet and greet that we have. And you know what? I think I've got your information already, but just in case, if you're a coffee drinker, email me, skinnity@gmail.com. I'm going to make sure you get some Lion coffee at the very least. I know you've got a coffee mug. I've sent you one. I want you to fill it up with some Lion coffee for everything that you've done for us consistently, not just today. This happens a lot. Thank you so much, my friend. I can't tell you how much it means. It's truly humbling. You know, people say you make too big a deal out of this. I'm like, you start your own entertainment type of business and see somebody like Michael Ranquillo come in and John Harrell and Coach and Keith Robbins, and We Sound Strange, and Edward Brown, and Keith and Ellen Johnson, and Jay Black, and Rusty, and Michael again, come in and support your show like this and see how it makes you feel. It's humbling. It is truly humbling. On that note, we're going to get out of here. Again, make sure you are checking out lioncoffee.com. Use your promo code. I'll put it in the description of the chat. I didn't do that yet. I will. Of Go Falcons 20. What did I miss?
Got another big
gracious.
One. Yeah.
Another one. Keo, put in here real quick before we get out of here how I pronounce your name. Is it Key or Kai? So Key, put in K-E-Y, like Key. And then, or for Kai, put in just K-I with a capital I, K-I. And if I screwed that up, if it's Kia, help me out with that. I want to make sure I get this right. So shout out to you as well. Crescent, we got the moon, we got the sunrise. We got it all going on today. Goodness, guys. I will be back on Friday. We're going to go through, we'll talk some more draft on Friday for sure, because it's the Friday before the draft. On that note, we're going to get out of here. We're going to go talk some Broncos. If you want to come join us, come on over to youtube.com/milehighhuddle. We're going to have some Broncos for breakfast and keep the party going. And that's all I got. I'm relatively speechless, which is hard because I got to get us out of here, Nick. You get us out of here today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Make sure you check out Lion Coffee again, as we said. Speaking of which, I got to go fill up before the next one because sad. I need my go-go juice. But appreciate everyone. We'll see you again. I'll see you again next week. And like Scott said, if you want to come out and talk more Broncos, we're going to talk Dane Brugler's mock draft. So catch us over there.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good day. Rest of your day, rest of your week. We'll see you Friday.